I doubt I'll ever forget that evening. The rain was falling, the kind that raps on your window as if to warn you. I had just finished a 12-hour stint at the medical facility. My feet ached, my back was sore, and I longed to retire to bed and seek comfort beneath the covers. However, I discovered 3 missed calls from my mother and one message that left me speechless when I checked my phone. Take a look at the group conversation. Right now. I paused. There was a strange feeling. Typical updates in the chat included my brother posting memes that no one found funny, my sister boasting about her children, and mom commenting with the same thumbs up emoji, as though she was truly listening. However, this felt different. I opened it then, and there it was. A screen grab. A message. My sister wrote this, obviously intended for someone else, but accidentally shared it to the entire family group chat. It stated, "She will undoubtedly continue to pay. She does it every time." That parasite believes mom genuinely cares for her. I didn't even realize at first that it was about me. I kept reading the words again in the hopes that I had misinterpreted them and that it had to do with someone else. However, the subsequent mails verified it. It's pitiful how desperate she is for acceptance. Let her continue to work as a slave. No questions asked, free money, don't remove this. She will never have the courage to go. The messages were not erased. Nobody expressed regret. Nobody spoke. They simply, as though it didn't matter, let it sit there. As if I were unimportant. What about my mother? She remained on the internet. I caught her typing. Then she halted. I waited and bided their time. However, there was no message. Any insult was overshadowed by that silence. Setting my phone down, I simply gazed at the wall. All I could hear was the hum of my refrigerator. The entire world seemed to have stopped to allow that moment to fully register. Just that morning, I reflected on the $800 I had moved to my mother's account. Pay the rent and utilities, her prescription drugs, groceries. I talked about everything. It wasn't because I was wealthy. I work as a nurse. I miss meals, put in extra hours at work, and haven't taken a holiday in almost 6 years. I felt she needed me, so I did it. Because I believed that we were still related. I sat on the sidelines for family gatherings, so I wasn't quite part of the jokes. While my brother received a new watch and my sister a fashionable pocketbook, I received a generic candle for Christmas last year. It didn't matter, I told myself. I reminded myself that gifts weren't a good way to gauge love. Perhaps, though, I've always known I was the outsider. I tried, though. Every Sunday, I made a call. I sent birthday cards. When my mother claimed to be drowning, I paid off her credit cards. In order to spare her from having to sell the house, I even took on a second job last year. I was the parasite, and yet here I was. It hurt. It burned. No. I took a while to cry. Later, I noticed my reflection while brushing my teeth. Because I had worn artificial grins like armor for so many years, my eyes were swollen. My complexion was pale, and the corners of my mouth were tight. I appeared worn out. From being unloved, not only from labor, I wiped my mouth, shut off the light, and stood for a long time in the dark. Something broke inside of me that night. It wasn't an overpowering experience. The sound isn't overly dramatic, just a soft shattering, like glass breaking slowly as it slides off a shelf. I heard what they had to say again and again. No questions asked. Free money. I had sacrificed so much. My time, my vitality, my health. For what purpose is it being used? To have my back laughed at? To be referred to as a burden? All of the bills that I had paid suddenly came to mind. I had gone grocery shopping for mom every time. I worked every shift rather than taking a break. And an idea struck me in the middle of my chest like lightning. You are not loved by them. They simply take advantage of you. The truth was harsh. However, often the most painful realities are the ones that liberate you. I had no idea what I would do next. However, I was certain of one thing: I refused to continue serving them in silence. No more. And the thing they would most regret? They didn't know what I could do. I didn't get any sleep that evening. I just lay there looking at the ceiling while memories, some vivid, others dim, swirled in my mind like smoke. However, they all indicated the same reality that I had long denied. My upbringing prepared me for service. Not adored, not treasured, simply put, used. Everyone knows your name and your family's business in the little town where I grew up. When I was 9 years old, my dad departed. No farewell. There were no guarantees that he would come back. He was gone in a single morning. He fled with a waitress from the diner 2 towns over, according to my mother. She was pacing the living room floor, muttering about bills, betrayal, and how men always leave. But I didn't even cry. I became her shadow after that day. She relied on me as her trusted assistant. Her assistant, Emma, my sister, who was 2 years younger, was the princess in the meanwhile. She didn't do any housework. She escaped being grounded. If she cried, the world would cease to exist. My brother Jake was the golden boy. He received football, girls, and scholarships, as if they were his inheritance. In contrast, I tidied up after dinner and scrubbed the dishes before school. I discovered early on that the only way to get noticed was to be helpful. When I was 16 and landed my first job, I gave Mom half of my earnings without asking. She said it was for the house. I didn't question it, it was satisfying to assist. However, I didn't seem to matter as much the more I offered. I recall graduating from high school once. The valedictorian was me. I was the first person in my family to enroll in college, work 2 jobs, and ace every test. I pleaded with my mother to attend the wedding. I will, she said. She never appeared. That following evening, Emma had a small dancing recital, and that was all. Nevertheless, I attended college, borrowed money. I worked night shifts at the campus bookstore and had quick noodles for dinner. Every weekend, I called home, sent money each month. It was tight, Mom always complained, so I sent more. I took a leave of absence to assist her when she reported being ill. I spent all of my savings when she informed me that her electricity will be turned off. I sold my automobile when she sobbed over the phone over a credit card lawsuit. That's what family does, I reassured myself. But gradually, a doubt started to germinate. Emma constantly had new clothes, I noticed. Jake purchased a brand new truck. Mom acquired a new flat-screen TV all of a sudden. I gently inquired once if she had made another purchase with the money I sent. She lost her temper. Don't ask me questions. Do you believe that I would deceive my own daughter? I therefore kept my mouth shut. Once more. After all, I was the good one, the trustworthy one. But more quickly than you might believe, reliable becomes invisible. The worst thing? I wanted to think they were in love with me. Yes, I did, even when people forgot my birthday. Even over the holidays when I sat by myself. I just wanted to hear something nice, even after I was told to quit being dramatic, after being turned down for a promotion. They tossed me some leftovers, which I held on to. A few months later, I received a thank you note. We appreciate everything you do, but the group chat message never included a genuine hug, gesture, or presence. Then, 3 months ago, I was shaken by an event. Mom called in tears. She mentioned that she was overwhelmed by a pile of medical bills. She was terrified and lacked insurance. She was afraid that if she didn't make the payment immediately, she might lose her house. Her voice carried genuine anxiety, or so I believed. The following day, I sent her $4,000. I didn't care that I was already overdue on my rent. She was my mom. That week, I put in 6 12-hour shifts to make ends meet. Then I saw it a week later. Emma's Instagram with a tagged picture. The family took a weekend trip to Napa Valley. The group included Emma, my mother, and an unidentified boy, giggling over brunch and champagne. The caption said, "Providing Lucas with the life he deserves at last #FamilyFirstLucas." I didn't understand the name. However, the boy in the photo caught my attention. He bears a striking resemblance to my brother Jake. He is too much like him. I focused on my mom's face. She was radiant, calmed, sporting a brand new jacket. I spent a lot of time looking at that picture. I then looked at my account. The day they checked into the hotel, my last wire transfer was successful, and that's when something inside of me exploded. I gave Emma a call. She didn't respond. I sent Mom a text. No response. So I gave Jake a call. He took it up. "What are you looking for?" "Flatly," he said. I inquired about Lucas's identity, quiet. Then he chuckled. "You were unaware?" I said. "Mom didn't tell you?" I remained silent. She has been caring for Lucas for several years. His father passed away. She was sorry, claimed that it was her duty. I felt sick to my stomach. Who is he? I muttered. Jake sighed as if I were foolish. He is the son of her boyfriend. That person she was seeing after Dad departed, you know? Yes. As it happens, he had a child. My ears are ringing. All this time, all those hours, all those nights when you couldn't sleep, I was laboring to cover the costs of a stranger. A child who wasn't even her biological child. Abruptly, the puzzle was put together, the partiality, the falsehoods, guilt trips, the unexpected costs, the holidays, the crises. She had created an entirely new life, and I'd been paying for it. I ended the call. I almost dropped my phone due to my trembling hands. I felt as if the air had been forced out of my flat as I stood in the center of it, surrounded by laundry, bills, and half-eaten takeout. All of my beliefs, all of my sacrifices, all of it was based on false information. I wasn't even upset. Not quite yet. I felt numb. I had persuaded myself for years that I was unworthy of true love, that I needed to prove myself, that perhaps they would see me at last if I just put forth more effort, donated more, and kept quiet. However, they didn't. I now understood why. As they didn't want me to be noticed. All they wanted was for me to remain valuable. I had too, so far. However, something had shifted within me. I had never had a chill in my chest before. Not anger, not melancholy, something more pointed. Decide. They believed that I would never leave. They were mistaken, and they were going to discover just how mistaken they were. It was 3 days before I spoke to anyone. No phone calls, no messages, no justifications. All I did was work. That week, the restaurant where I oversaw night shifts was understaffed, but rather than moaning, I embraced the diversion. I cleaned tables as if I had been insulted. My eyes burned as I sliced onions, not from the fragrance, but from something deeper. I couldn't quite put my finger on. Everyone saw that I was more reserved than normal. I stopped grinning, went more quickly, less sleep. I was unraveling inside. On the outside, however, I was under control. Written. Because silence becomes your armor after you've been unseen for a long enough period of time. I made a decision at around 2 in the morning on one of those long, silent nights. This decision was not motivated by malice, not even retaliation, only to survive. I retrieved all of the transfer receipts I had ever sent to my mother from my laptop. I retrieved every Venmo note and every wire transfer from my laptop. Rent, emergency expenses, gas money, and medical expenditures. One by one, I printed them out. It was in black and white that I wanted to see. I wanted to face the statistics, more than $38,000. I had given her that for the previous 6 years. It was sufficient to cover a down payment on a home, enough to launch a company, sufficient to transform a life, and I had not received any of it. That evening, I made a folder. I gave it the title Proof. After that, I created a spreadsheet. Every time, I wrote down the dates, the sums, and what she had told me. I then sent an email to a lawyer I used to work for at the restaurant. Months ago, when I assisted his wife in getting a misplaced phone back, he gave me his card. He had said, "If you ever need anything," I never imagined that I would, but now I did. He gave me a call back the following morning. "I recall you," he remarked kindly. "Tell me everything." And I did. There was a long pause as I informed him about Lucas, the youngster my mother had been providing for with my money. Finally, he stated that it is financial abuse. Additionally, you should take precautions if your name appears on anything related to her debt or estate. That word stayed with me. Mistreatment. Abuse had always seemed to me to be aggressive and noisy. Screaming. Bruises. Doors were slammed. However, what about those who are quiet? Do they inspire you to doubt your own worth? Does that exhaust you to the point that you lose your identity? I had not grown up in a conflict area. However, I had made it through one. I was done surviving now. It was time to take action. The following action was modest but symbolic. I went into the shared account that I had helped Mom create years before. She kept track of bills with it, but in reality, I transferred money there each month. I took my name off. I made a fresh account. One that is unrelated to her has a new password and uses two-step authentication. I then modified my phone number. Not indefinitely. Just enough so I have room. For a few days, I moved out of my apartment. stayed in a coworker's spare room, and gave myself space to reflect. And I kept my whereabouts a secret for the first time in my life. Not my mother, not Emma, not Jake. They also failed to notice. Not initially. However, my new phone buzzed with an email on the fifth day. My mother gave it to me. Line of text, "Where are you?" No salutations. No warmth. One sentence only. "You're not answering," Emma remarked. "By tomorrow, I need the rent transferred." I read it 3 times. "No, are you all right?" "No, we're concerned." "No, did something take place?" "Rent only." I didn't answer. A text message from an unidentified number arrived later that evening. "Hello. Emma is here. You're acting a little too dramatic. Could you please stop ignoring everyone?" I gazed at the display. Then I took an action that I had never taken before. The number was blocked by me. My lawyer called 3 days later. "Are you prepared to discuss options?" he asked. He explained everything to me when we first met in his office, me clutching my hands in my lap in my secondhand blazer. I was perfectly entitled to seek money. I could bring a lawsuit for small claims. I might inform the local aid agencies about the fraudulent medical claims. If she persisted in putting financial pressure on me, I might even request a protective order. More than that, though, he said something for which I was unprepared. "You are free to leave as well." Those words felt like a hot stone in my chest. Leave. Avoid arguing. Do not provide an explanation. Not provide an explanation. Simply proceed. However, I wasn't prepared. Not quite yet. I wanted them to be aware of it. I desired for them to observe. I thus printed an additional paper. It was a letter. A simple letter, 1 page long. That night, I went to the mailbox and sent one to Mom, Emma, and Jake. It stated inside, "I dedicated years of my life to this family. Love, money, time, and energy. You accepted it. After that, you said that I was a burden. You ate from my plate and fed me lies. I'm finally learning how to say no, so here I am. No more cash. Don't do any more favors. No more quiet. I hope the life I've worked for is enjoyable for Lucas, as it's the final thing I'll give him, the burden." There was no drama. It wasn't mean. It was the reality. And occasionally, that has greater force than anger. With a wobbly hand, I dropped the letters into the mailbox. Then I turned to leave. Not with sorrow, not in terror. However, with something I hadn't experienced in a long time, Command. The mayhem started in less than 24 hours. I was enjoying some lukewarm coffee while observing the street below from my friend's apartment balcony when my phone began to vibrate constantly. I now regret unblocking my mother's number, which I had done out of curiosity rather than forgiveness. The texts arrived first. "This letter, what is it? You're acting absurdly. Following all that I have done for you." Then the phone calls arrived. 1, next, 3, then 11. None of them were answered by me. Next, she tried voicemail. I never hit play, instead, letting them stack up. I was unable to. I wasn't prepared to hear her voice just yet, particularly not the harsh, accusing, panicky version she used when she lost control. The kind that turned her faults into mine, her guilt into blame. However, it wasn't quite that bad. The worst happened that night when I read a message from Emma in my inbox. Subject: "This family is being destroyed by you. No salutations, no effort to comprehend." A wall of language, full of accusation, mockery, and backhanded sympathy. I was melodramatic, she said. Claimed to be envious of Lucas. Said that since I made the decision to give Mom money, I shouldn't now pretend to be a victim. However, what she said about Lucas was the part that broke me, not even because it was directed at me. At least Mom has one child that values her at last. That phrase. Just that one sentence. It seemed as if something heavy and chilly had struck you in the chest. Lucas. I grew up thinking the boy was the son of a neighbor. My mom would sometimes talk about the youngster who needed help, but she would always provide hazy excuses like, "His mom is in trouble, they're struggling, I feel bad for him." As it happened, she had Lucas. Emma was also aware. They were all aware, except from me. The truth was now being used as a weapon, not only revealed. I didn't respond. I didn't stand up for myself. I decided to do something instead. It was time to respond with action instead of just reacting. I woke up early the following morning, dressed in my finest clothes, and entered my office with a specific objective in mind. Without question, I informed my manager that I needed a week off. After giving me a lengthy look, he nodded. He remarked, "You've never asked for anything. Proceed." So I did. That week, I did something that nobody in my family ever anticipated. I began anew. I started by closing the joint account I had created for Mom years prior. I entered the bank, presented my ID, and steadily signed the document. "Want to let the other account holder know?" the teller inquired courteously. "No," I replied. "She will work it out." I then made a new account using just my name, connected a savings app to it. Instead of leaving pay stubs or tax paperwork lying around for Emma or Mom to go through, I opened a safe storage folder on my cloud drive. I even went to my building's leasing office to update my emergency contact information. I changed my mother's name to mine because I didn't want the woman who had considered me a burden to decide whether to stop things if I ended up in the hospital or worse. I made one last stop on the fourth day of my reset week. I met with Melinda, a therapist, in a small office downtown, the kind with soothing beige walls and a little bookcase brimming with plants. Through a recommendation service, I had discovered her name. I wasn't sure if it would be beneficial, but I had had enough of acting like I was all right. She took her time with me. She didn't press. She simply listened. She also didn't bat an eye when I told her about the years of giving, the shame, the group chat, and the financial treachery. Rather, she made a straightforward statement. "They indoctrinated you into thinking that love was something you deserved." I wasn't prepared for how hard that hit. Since it was accurate, I was attempting to gain acceptance into a family that had never really wanted me, and it showed in every cash I donated, favor I accepted, and hour I spent fretting about their issues. They were in a panic now that I had stopped performing, not because they missed me, but more because they missed what I offered. It wasn't affection. Access was the issue. I received another SMS that evening. This time, it came from Jake, my oldest brother, the one who had profited from the family dynamics despite largely avoiding involvement. "Hello. I just wanted to express that I hope everything is well with you. Mom is not happy. Perhaps simply give her a call to make things right." It nearly made me chuckle. Make the air clear? As if there had been a miscommunication? Like I needed to apologize for being upset because I had overreacted? I didn't respond. Rather, I took a choice that would alter everything. I took out my old journal, the one where I scrawled thoughts I never had time for and kept secret in a drawer. Pages of notes, drawings, and numbers, my ideal cafe concept, were included within. It was a tiny coffee shop with local artwork on the walls, live music events, and a reading nook. For years, I had dreamed of it, but I kept telling myself it was too hazardous or too soon. Now, though, I now understood that remaining stagnant was the only danger. I then gave the bank a call, set up a meeting, and began drawing the company plan's initial draft. The fact that I wasn't wealthy was irrelevant. My family's lack of belief in me didn't matter. I had faith in myself for the first time in my life, and it was sufficient. I kept the fact that I was beginning a business a secret from my family. Why would I? Nothing that didn't directly benefit them had ever received their support. All of my previous achievements were either dismissed with contempt or subtly reframed as something they assisted me in achieving, even though all they ever did was demand and drain. So I said nothing this time. I selected a modest company space sandwiched between a florist and a laundromat, formed a small LLC, and met with a local business advisor. Although high, the rent was manageable, and Arturo, the owner, a quiet older man, recognized something in me. He handed me the keys and remarked, "You remind me of my daughter." She also gave her family her all, until she became aware that she was unique. Why that remained with me is beyond me. Perhaps because I felt noticed for the first time in a long time. I kept thinking about the group conversation while I worked late into the night painting the cafe walls and meticulously unpacking the used espresso equipment I had purchased online. Regarding the treachery that had set the entire situation on fire, however, I directed my anger at the bookshelves, the floor tiles, and the dim lighting rather than letting it burn me alive. Every little thing was a silent revolt, a declaration. I'm creating something that belongs to me, and I can't let anyone take it away. In the midst of a thunderstorm, I thought of the name, Second Pour. It was more than simply coffee. It was about making a fresh start and giving myself another shot. I got a letter in the mail 2 weeks prior to the grand opening. My mother gave it to me. Not a letter written by hand. She mailed me a printed email that she had supposedly drafted but never sent, acting as a pathetic gesture. She opened up, feeling guilty. Discussed how difficult it has been to raise 2 children alone since your father passed away. Naturally, she also brought up Lucas, said she never intended to hurt me, and described him as troubled. However, this line was the one that made me laugh out loud. I understand that you believe I spent your money, but that wasn't the case. You've always been the responsible one, and I needed your help. That twisted logic was there once more, as if I was her personal ATM since I was the responsible one. Like I owed her something since she was the kid who never asked for anything. However, I no longer felt the ache as acutely. I thought the letter would destroy me, to send me into a downward spiral. Rather, the first made one fold, put it in a drawer, and resumed testing muffin recipes. On a Friday morning, the opening day arrived. Just a few flyers, a social media profile, and a calm faith that perhaps, just possibly, the appropriate individuals will show up were my only marketing efforts. And they did. A local school teacher happened to wander in. A few of the remote workers then searched for a peaceful spot. I had a full room and a long wait by lunchtime. It was well received. I was liked by them. Nobody here gave a damn about my family or how much I had sacrificed. On the second visit, they just cared about the coffee, the warmth, and my recollection of their names. And I was at the center of something positive for once, not because I was helpful, but because I was myself. Peace, however, has a humorous way of attracting attention. As I was tidying up that Sunday afternoon, Emma entered through the open door. She didn't appear to have slept. Her eyes darted around the room, and her hair was tightly pushed back. She didn't greet me, simply stood there in a state of shock. "Did you open this?" she inquired. Calmly, the first nodded. "Indeed. How much money?" The question sounded biting and unpleasant. "Equally," I answered. "My money." This time, I kept the money to myself. She blinked, as though she was trying to comprehend that I had done something without telling her or Mom. "You told no one," she whispered. "No," I replied. "I didn't." We stood in quiet for a long time. Her gaze moved over the spotless tables, the dim lighting, and the chalkboard menu with the little hearts I had put next to the day's muffins. When she eventually said, "You've changed," it wasn't a compliment. "Yes," I said. "Yes, I have." She left quickly. Her expression was unreadable as she simply remained there long enough to make it awkward, then turned and left. However, I understood her emotions. Fear. Fear of losing me, not fear of myself. They were afraid that their beloved doormat, fixer, or donor was gone. My mother's turn came 3 days later. I gave her a pink scarf 3 birthdays ago, and she wore it when we opened at 9:00 a.m. Something I had once given her out of affection suddenly felt like a quiet indictment around her neck, and I recall seeing it right away. She placed no orders, just stood by the counter, fumbling with her handbag. "I noticed Emma passing by," she remarked, her eyes downcast. She did. "You're doing this full-time now," she informed me. "Yes, I am." "I assumed you were lending a hand with the loan. It was there. The guilt is inevitable." I didn't wince. I said. "For many years. Behind my back, you gave Lucas money." She flushed. "That wasn't the case." "That's how it was." And I interrupted in a calm voice. "You told a lie." "You also took advantage of me." She blinked quickly before taking a step forward. "You are my daughter." I tried my hardest. "No, Mom," I answered quietly. "You took the easy route." She didn't respond, and I had a tremendous realization at that very instant. I had lost my anger. Not at all. I felt like I was done. Not in a dramatic, vindictive manner. I just finished trying. I'm done sacrificing myself for those who wouldn't support me if I fell. Consequently, I gave her a business card. "It costs $4.50 if you want coffee. If you wish to speak, you must be honest. If not, there is nothing else to say." The card was not taken by her. Silently, She walked away, and as I watched her leave, I had an odd sensation in my chest that wasn't pride or grief, something more subdued, liberty. I didn't anticipate hearing from my mother again so quickly after she left the cafe that morning. Perhaps a week, I reasoned. Perhaps a month would suffice. Perhaps never. But my phone rang that same night. Unknown figure. I let the voicemail go. It was a brief message. She spoke haltingly. My accounts were frozen by them. I must speak with you. I didn't answer. I didn't have to, because the repercussions that had always eluded me were suddenly falling in the right place. The first was the joint mortgage that I had been contributing to for many years. One by one, the automatic payments stopped working when I stopped sending money every month. Initially, my mother hadn't noticed since she thought the money would just arrive, as if it had always been. Most likely, she assumed I was simply late or preoccupied, or, as she often stated with that performative anxiety, working too much. She discovered, however, that this time was different after 3 missed payments and a warning letter from the bank. Lucas, her golden boy in her covert project, was also unraveling. To be honest, I didn't want to know specifics about his life. Therefore, I had never asked for them. However, I was aware that she had been secretly sponsoring things for him. That something was due now. One afternoon, I received an email from the mortgage lender. Every cosigner and guarantor was being contacted. It turns out that she had unintentionally listed me as a backup, and this is when the former me would have fallen apart. To avoid difficulties, I would have wired the money, contacted the bank to repair it, worried, and felt guilty. I would have sobbed before putting in extra effort to fix what I never damaged. However, I was no longer covered by her insurance, so I gave a lawyer a call. And with his assistance, I gave him the records proving that a year earlier I had resigned from any co-financial responsibility. As it happened, she had retained the falsified paperwork. It's possible that she never updated it. In any case, the paper trail was unambiguous. I was no longer her fallback option. After 2 weeks, I began to hear sounds from a friend who we both share, from a former neighbor. According to my sister, your mom is having financial difficulties. She is no longer herself. Silently, I listened, nodded courteously, remained silent. I wasn't gloating for that reason. However, I wasn't saving either. I was more surprised by the lack of remorse than by the guilt I had anticipated feeling. I thought I would feel something sharp if she ever fell. A pain. I have a strong desire to return to my familiar role as the fixer. I am looking forward to returning to the system of quiet support. The good daughter. Instead, though, I felt motionless. Firm. Light. A customer hovered close to the front counter one evening as the cafe was shutting. A quiet older woman I'd seen a few times, always reading. She gave me a hesitant glance. She said, "Pardon me if I'm being too direct. However, you seem to have changed recently. Lighter." I gave a small smile. This season has been peculiar. After giving me a nod, she said something that stuck with me. When things improve, peace doesn't always follow. It happens when you let them go at last. On a $3 coffee, she handed me a $10 gratuity. As I stood there with the money in my hand, I reflected on all I had recently let go of. Giving up trying to win approval. Letting go of necessity. Letting go of the need to defend myself to those who are determined to misunderstand me. And I had discovered lucidity, which I had believed would never return, somewhere in that silent release. Naturally, though, my mother wasn't quite prepared to part with me. She returned to the cafe a few days later. Not to yell, not to beg, but to act. She brought a plastic container of cookies made at home, the ones I loved when I was younger. She put them gently on the counter and added, "I thought we could talk." I gave them a look, next at her, and I came to the realization that this gesture was cloaked in shame and honey. A desperate backward reach. I answered, "Thank you, but I no longer accept offerings." She blinked. "All I'm trying to do is get back in touch. As mother and daughter, you know." Calm and clear, I leaned on the counter. "Now, you can't call it that. Mom, you held the title. However, you gave it away to someone who was more in need of salvation than I was." She appeared injured, as if she hadn't anticipated me saying it out. However, I did, for us both. I didn't flinch either. I went on, I don't hate you. However, I will no longer serve as your scapegoat. When you fall, you won't rely on me, and when you get back up, you'll forget about it. She didn't dispute it. She simply gazed at me as though she were observing a stranger. Perhaps she was. I made a new acquaintance that evening. One of the shattered stools toward the rear was fixed by a local carpenter. He didn't ask me questions I didn't want to answer, and he was calm and gentle. Upon finishing his job, he sat down, requested a cup of tea, and informed me about the wood shop he was constructing outside of town. Come by if you ever need shelves made from real oak, not the cheap stuff, he remarked as he was leaving. It was a little matter. However, it was truthful. No wait, have no expectations, simply being there. It also served as a reminder that meaningful life doesn't have to be spectacular. It simply must be true. Weeks went by. The cafe expanded, and I poured a bit more into myself with every cup I filled. I went back to writing, sleeping the night long, laughing the kind of genuine laughter that was free of remorse. My mother's missed calls still occasionally illuminated my phone. She wasn't blocked by me. I didn't respond, though. And it wasn't a spiteful decision. It was a show of deference. For the line I had constructed, I had reconstructed my life, and the tranquility I was at last defending. I still wake up some mornings expecting to be exhausted. This is the type of exhaustion that arises not from a lack of sleep, but from living a life that isn't your own. This fatigue arises from carrying burdens that are not your own, from kind-hearted individuals who take your generosity for duty. However, as I open my eyes and feel the warmth of the sun on my kitchen's wooden floor, I recall, I've changed since then. I used to believe that proving myself to other people was the path to freedom, that they would eventually see me if I put in enough effort, gave enough, and persevered long enough. Give me the affection I deserve at last. But I never received anything but silence. Alternatively, I experienced conditional affection. Please acknowledge my contributions when they are helpful. I'm to blame for saying no. My life is tranquil now. However, it belongs to me. I take delight in operating my cafe. I greet the same regulars who have grown to be more like family than the family I was born into, handpick every blend, and bake on Sundays. They are the ones who genuinely inquire about my well-being. Those that view me as a human being rather than a resource. When someone has already made up their mind, I no longer bother to explain myself. Forgiveness is not something I seek. I'm not seeking love. I also no longer feel bad about needing boundaries. I've discovered that sometimes leaving is the most innovative thing you can do. I received an envelope in the mail last month. I instantly recognized the handwriting, even though there was no return address. My mom's. There was a card inside. Easy. A little uncomfortable. But there it was. I'm aware that I offended you. I believed I was acting in everyone's best interests. However, I can now see the expense of it. I have no expectations. Just hoping all is okay with you, Mother. I spent a lot of time sitting with it. Not upset. Not sentimental. Simply remain motionless. After that, I made myself a cup of tea and put it in a drawer. Because it's not always loud to forgive. It isn't a speech. No reunion. I immediately forgave her. Not for her. However, for me, so that I might continue on. In order for me to rest without guilt, give without exhaustion, and love without fear. Sometimes I see her. She is usually found in the supermarket, at the market for farmers. She even went past the cafe window once, but she didn't enter. We gave a courteous nod. Not much more. And that's all right. Because reconciliation does not always equate to closure. Sometimes it's simply tranquility. The type you create with oneself following years of turmoil. Daniel, the carpenter, came by once more a few weeks ago. He delivered a tiny wooden tray that had been carved, inscribed with my initials, and polished with warm oils. He smiled softly and added, "For your scones." For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to pretend as I smiled back. As the sun set, we sat outside and told each other stories about everything and nothing. And I came to the following realization during the pause between sentences. I had started over. Not flawless. Not even a simple one, but a real one. If you're watching this and have ever given their all for someone who just understood how to take, I recognize you. I understand that type of suffering. This type of suffering is of the silent variety, the type of feeling you get when someone accuses you of being overly sensitive or ungrateful for finally speaking out sufficiently. But listen to me, you are not self centered for establishing limits. It's not harsh of you to leave. Just because someone else viewed you like a burden doesn't mean you are one. You are worthy of more than just surviving. Peace is something you deserve, and you don't get serenity from them. This is something you assert. Therefore, if you've ever been excluded from your own family, recognize that you are visible. You're not undeserving. You are never alone at all. I appreciate you sticking by me on this adventure. I hope you will share your story if it resonates with you in any way. And please, don't give up if you're still in the midst of your storm. Your tranquility is just waiting for you. And you'll know when it happens. For the first time in years, it will feel like breathing.